Okay, going back to here, I would like you to fill in this column, to do this and fill in this column, and then do the same thing for this column, and then get a monthly total. And I want all of it to be using the array formula method. You could obviously do this without array formula, but the point is to learn how to use array formula. So do it just the way I did it, and then also do it here and here. So here you want to get the wages for the monthly total. So do that, and then save it like this. Your family name, don't write obviously your family name like this would be if it was me. It would be Claster. Your given name, your student ID, write information lab, and the date that it's due. Now this is due the day of our next class. And save it. By the way, for all the homework problems that for all the homework that you have to hand in, you should use this format. And if there are multiple files and you end up wanting to zip your files, always use a zip. Never use RAR. Some people use RAR. So that's a zipping technology, but don't do that, because I may not have RAR on the computer that I'm using, so I may not be able to open it up very easily, so I don't want to have to do that. So only use zipping technology. In other words, save it. If you're going to zip something, if you're going to compress it, use the standard .zip technology, please. Okay, so save it like this, and this will be due on our next class. Okay? Okay, now we're going back to here. So he says planning the approach. How are we going to do this? Before you undertake something like the project I'm about to describe, there are a few issues you should keep in mind. If you can't think of a satisfactory way to deal with them, you might want to consider taking a completely different approach. Okay. First of all, when we're going to do data mining, we're going to need some kind of variable that we're trying to predict or something like that. And he says we're going to need a meaningful variable. Most important is the availability of one or more variables on the website that bear on what you're interested in, even if only indirectly. Here he's talking about the fact that he's interested in how many books he's sold, but they don't tell him that. But they do tell him his his sales ranking. So he says that we need the availability of one or more variables, for example, sales ranking, on the website at Amazon that bear on what he's interested in, which is actually number of books sold, even if only indirectly. So sales ranking is not exactly the same as number of books sold, but even it's an indirect relationship. He says, for example, Amazon does not publish on a publicly accessible web page how many copies of a book it has sold, whether actual physical books or downloaded electronic copies. It doesn't tell you that, doesn't put that anywhere public. But as I mentioned in the prior section, Amazon does publish sales ranking. For the project described here, I decided that I could live with sales ranking as an indicator of sales figures. Okay, so maybe in your final project, you're going to be trying to get data on some variable, but it may not be directly available. So you may be in the same kind of situation that he's in. So you're going to have to use some other variable as a kind of substitute for, or as he calls it, an indicator for what you're actually interested in. I also learned that although Amazon usually updates the sales ranking every hour, sometimes the updates don't take place. So, they're just doing it when they feel like it, sort of. Sometimes, and that may be the case for, in your final project, you may not have exactly what you need at exactly the time that you need it. Sometimes they're a little late. Sometimes several hours pass without any update occurring. And sometimes the rankings don't entirely make sense, particularly in the wee hours, means like very late at night. A ranking can drift from 20,000 at 4 a.m. to this at 5 a.m. to this at 6 a.m. and so on. I don't know why that doesn't make sense, but he says something's wrong with that. He says that kind of movement can't reflect sales. Well, I'm not sure why not, but whatever. And the deltas are much smaller and more regular at other times of day. I'm not quite sure what he means by that, but by the deltas he means the changes. The change was 20,000. This was a delta, I guess, of 5. It dropped by 5, or maybe it would be minus 5. And here's another delta of maybe minus 5. So I'm not quite sure what he means. But I found that most of the time the updates do take place hourly, give or take a couple of minutes. So you'll have the same kinds of problems if you're collecting data from a website. They're not doing it for you, and they're not going to publish it in just the way that you want it. So you might have to, make some kinds of adjustments because of that. And correspond either to no sales. So if there's no sales in a certain time period, apparently he thinks that his ranking will get higher. I mean, higher means a bigger number. So if there's no sales in a certain time period, your sales ranking will get larger, which means you're getting worse. Or a presumed sale, the rankings get smaller, often by a lot. So, okay. So he says, I decided that I could live with changes in rankings as a stand-in for actual sales. So he's going to use changes in rankings as a stand-in for the actual sales, as a substitute for actual sales. I also decided that I could make an assumption about an increase in ranking, such as from 25,000 to 20,000. That's a pretty big jump. That's a big enough jump that I can assume a sale took place. I can't tell for sure how many units were sold, but these books don't sell like a Stieg Larsson novel. In other words, a very popular book. So his books, on predictive analytics in Excel are not, it's not like a novel with millions of people are buying it. Amazon sells 4 or 5 copies of my books each day, not 4,000 or 5,000 copies of my books each day. So when I see an improvement in the ranking of a few thousand, it almost certainly indicates the sale of a single unit. So he's going to say that if it's a big, even a 5,000 change in ranking from 25,000 to 20,000, he's going to say that's just one book sold. So I don't know about that, but I guess he has a little bit better knowledge about this than I do, or than we do. So anyway, given so you might have to do something similar. You're going to have to make guesses about what's going on. You just have to, when you do your final project, you have to explain the guesses, how the guesses that you made and your reasons for making them. You don't have to be exactly right, but you just have to give, reasons for why you think it makes sense. Given that information, or maybe more accurately, educated guesses, so it's only a guess what he's doing, it's possible to get a handle on what you need to include in a workbook to access, analyze, and synthesize the data sensibly. So now we have our kind of setup, and now we're going to try and put this into a workbook. So now we're going to have to. Now he's going to say, let's see how we're going to set up our workbook. We're going to have what we call query sheets. What query sheets are going to be where the workbook has many sheets in it, right? Like this workbook has 3 sheets in it, but you can add another sheet and another sheet. You can have as many sheets as basically as you need. So a workbook has many sheets, and he's going to put The query sheet is going to be where the he basically downloads the website onto his workbook, and then he's going to have, after query sheets, he's going to have, let's see, do I have to go through the whole thing here? Let's see if I look here. No. Well, he's going to have summary sheets where he's going to summarize what's happened on the web page, and then I guess he's probably going to have like analysis sheets. Anyway, we'll get to those. Anyway, so he's going to have different sheets in the workbook to do different things. So he wants to set that up. So planning the workbook structure. Your workbook needs 3 types of worksheets. One type to collect the data from your web queries. So you collect the data from Amazon and you put it on one sheet. One type to bring the data together into a single place. And one type to run whatever analysis are needed. You'll also need a VBA module to hold your code, but that is covered in a later section of this chapter. So VBA is a form of Visual Basic, and we're going to go through that. And VBA module means like a sheet where the code is located. Okay, all right, let's stop here, and we'll come back and continue with we're going to retrieve the data from the web.